14th, 2020, last meeting of this wonderful year of the Winston-Salem County Utilities Commission. Can you believe it's December? Clinton, would you call the roll, please?
Okay, you ready for me to call the roll? Yes. I apologize. Chairman Randall Tuttle.
Present.
Vice Chairman Wesley Curtis.
Present.
Commissioner Harold Day.
Present.
Commissioner Tom Griffin. Commissioner Tom Griffin.
Present.
Okay. Commissioner Yvonne Hines.
Present.
Commissioner Hugh Jernigan.
Present.
Commissioner Dwayne Long. Commissioner Dwayne Long. He's coming on now. I see him.
Be sure to wish him a happy birthday.
Okay. Commissioner Dwayne Long. Okay, we'll go back to him. Commissioner Chris Parker.
Here.
We did get an email from Commissioner Stewart that he wouldn't be attending this meeting. Commissioner Charles Wilson.
Present.
Commissioner Alan Younger.
I'm here. Thank you.
Commissioner Dwayne Long.
I'm here.
Is today your birthday?
Yesterday was, so I'm much older now. I've got a lot more experience now in age.
Happy birthday, Dwayne.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Tuttle.
Welcoming, not that he needs any welcome. Mr. Crump is with us. We'll be hearing about wastewater later on. That's always great. Courtney, turn it over to you.
Okay. Good afternoon, commissioners. I hope everyone had a good Thanksgiving holiday. I'm sure it was a little different than years past, but I hope it went well. So I'm going to share my screen. Well, actually, before I do that, I need to introduce who's on the call from staff. So let me do that real quick. So again, Courtney Driver, Utilities Director, Damon Duquesne, I'm sorry, Duquesne, Assistant City Manager. I know. Patrice Glenn, Reporting Secretary. Mike Quivisto, Deputy Director. Jan McHarg, Assistant Director, Solid Waste. Frank Crump, Wastewater Treatment Superintendent. Shane Chu Huffman, Capital Projects Engineer. Todd Lewis, Senior Civil Engineer. Gail Kettler and Kyra Boyd, part of the communications team. Lisa Saunders, Chief Financial Officer. Jerry Bates, Purchasing Director. Marilena Jensen-Goosehold, Assistant City Attorney. Kirk Bjorling, Real Estate Administrator. Shakira Westbrook, Office of Business Inclusion and Advancement. And Heather Curry with the Budget Office. So I think I covered everybody from staff that is on the call. And after that, I will share my screen. Okay. I'm assuming everybody can see it. Well, I'm not presenting it though, so there we go. Now we're good. All right, so today I'll have some announcements to make. Again, we've got Frank Crump here who's going to be doing a wastewater treatment operations overview. Then we'll have our water and wastewater updates. Michael Stover is under the weather, not feeling well today, so I'm going to present his slides, and I know I'm not going to be able to do as good a job as he does, so you'll have to forgive me for that. Then Mike Quivisto will give our water and wastewater financial updates. Jan will do our solid waste updates, and then we'll go through our agenda items, and Shane will wrap us up at the end with our CIP update. So a few announcements. Again, the City of Winston-Salem University series, Frank's getting ready to go over the wastewater treatment overview. This is the fourth in fourth in line, I guess, of the series that we've given so far. We started with an overview of the department. Then Bill Brewer gave the water treatment overview. Kenny Atkins joined us in October to do the field operations overview, and so Frank will talk through wastewater treatment. And this is the same presentation that we give during the City of Winston-Salem University class, and it's really just it's a high-level overview of our department and what we do. So, the January meeting will be canceled. We, as of right now, we don't really have any items to present to you, and so January will be canceled unless something changes. Okay, this is just a reminder of the FY21 key work items that we have for the department. One that I wanted to, all these are on schedule and we're moving along well in each of these areas. The one I did want to draw your attention to is receive bids for Nelson Modernization Project. We do have that. We do need to have another discussion about how we want to proceed with that project. So we've got that presentation scheduled for February's meeting to go back through that in detail and talk through how we want to move forward with that, the bid and moving forward with that. So. Okay, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Frank. Whenever you're ready, Frank, I'll move to the next slide.
All right, I had to unmute myself there. First, thank y'all for letting me speak a little bit about the wastewater treatment. I'm going to assume they saved the best for last, but it may just be we're at the end of the pipe. So we're going to just a very high level about wastewater treatment. The city, of course, has two wastewater treatment plants. The first is the Archie Elledge wastewater treatment plant. It's been in operation since 1956 and is currently rated for 30 million gallon a day treatment capacity. And it discharges into the Salem Creek Basin. Next. The other facility is the Muddy Creek wastewater treatment plant, and it's been in operation since 1986. It is currently rated for 21 million gallons a day treatment capacity. It discharges directly into the Yadkin River. To talk just a little bit about the wastewater treatment process itself, the very first step is what we refer to as preliminary treatment. And it has a couple of steps within it. The first of that being the bar screen. And just think about that as a bunch of bars lined up vertically in a row, and they catch rags, sticks, all kinds of debris, and an automatic rake will pull that out of the flow and dump it into a dumpster, because we don't want that kind of material moving downstream, tearing up pumps and other equipment. And it's best treated just carrying it, dewatering it, and carrying it straight to the landfill. The second part of that is the grit removal process. And we use a vortex grit system. And really all we're doing, we're removing sand, rocks, inorganic material that passes by the bar screens that we want to get out, because it is also best treated just dewatering that material, compacting it and putting it in the dumpster that you're seeing on the screen and carrying to the landfill. After the preliminary treatment process, we go to primary clarification. And just think about it as just a big holding tank where we separate the solids from the liquids. The water that flows through these tanks is generally held into 2 to 3 hours detention time. From there, it will remove 60 to 70% of the total suspended solids, and ultimately about 40% of the biochemical oxygen demand. And that BOD, that's what we use in the trades to determine and classify how strong the waste is coming into the plants. So by removing with the bar screens and the grit channels and then primary clarification, by this point, we've removed 60 to 70% of the solids that you would see coming into the plant, which dramatically reduces the load on our aeration basin, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. But these primary clarifiers also remove any floating oils or grease that would come to the top of those clarifiers, and we're able to pull those out, thicken those up, dry it out, and also carry that material to the landfill as well. So, next. So the next step is the secondary treatment, which is the heart of the facilities or any wastewater treatment plant. It is where we take the wastewater that's coming in after we've removed all the rock sticks, those type of materials, send it to the activated sludge basin, and it is just a large basin where the organisms, microscopic organisms, they are what does all the work really here at a wastewater treatment plant. We manage that biomass so that there's approximately 5 pounds of bugs for each pound of BOD that's coming in. So, and as these bugs eat up the BOD, they create additional bugs. During this process, ammonia is also oxidized to nitrate, so it is not discharged into the stream to cause any problems. And to give you an idea of how much organisms we're talking about, at the Elledge wastewater treatment plant, we maintain a biomass, or how many bugs we've got in the system, of approximately 185 tons in those aeration basins and clarifiers. Of that, we're generating and creating about 22,000 pounds every day, which in turn we need to waste back out of this system so we can maintain the amount of bugs to the amount of BOD coming into the system. So we've got to maintain that as a stable process. Yeah. Right here, you're seeing some pictures of a final clarifier, which is on your left. That is where, after the flow leaves the aeration basin, it'll go into these final clarifiers, and this is where we separate all those bugs or organisms back out of the flow, and we settle those organisms out, and we send them back to the aeration basin so they can work again. And the clear effluent water will come off the top of those final clarifiers and go down to, you'll see a graphic there of a chlorine contact chamber. So that is where the clear water, after it has been treated, would go to this chlorine contact chamber, where we would add hypochlorite as a disinfecting agent and allow it time for it to react with anything that may still be left in the flow. And then we will dechlorinate it with sodium bisulfite before we release it out into Salem Creek. Next. That's kind of what we were just talking about there, the final clarification process, where those bugs are settled out and returned back to be reused. Yeah, we've talked about this. If you want to go to the next slide. Wastewater treatment plant removal efficiencies. We monitor in the amount of solids, whether it be suspended solids, BOD, ammonia, the things that the state keeps track of, and based off of what comes into the wastewater treatment facilities, as you can see, in fiscal year 1920, we received a little over 34,000 tons of material coming in that is regulated by the state. Now, our permits say we could discharge as much as almost 4,600 tons of that waste over the course of the year back into the receiving streams. Fortunately, we've got a good running system here and get the support that we need from administration and, of course, from the commission as well. And what we actually discharged in 1920 was just over 1,000 tons, which is right at a 97% efficiency, removal efficiency for the wastewater treatment facilities. Next. Some of the side things that we also operate here at the wastewater treatment facility. Of course, we have a biosolids drying facility, and that facility is where all those bugs and materials that are pulled out, we will thicken those up in a centrifuge and then run them through our regional dryer facility, creating a pelletized material, which we use as a soil amendment to disperse pretty much almost all around North Carolina. Next. We also have several support groups. We've got a laboratory here on site, and our chemists perform right at 160 chemical analysis each day, which help us maintain proper operations. And we also utilize that information to report back on our state reports, which our lab department create and submit those discharge monitoring reports to do those electronically and keep them all correct. We also have our own maintenance departments and electrical and instrumentation departments on site to help us keep the facilities running correctly. The industrial waste control is another department that we utilize here. They are tasked with issuing permits and monitoring the discharge from significant industrial users throughout the county. They monitor these industries, give them permits on what they can and cannot discharge. They also administer and maintain the grease control program, which you may have heard a little bit about with the utilities field operations group. That's where we are keeping track of food service establishments throughout the county. We meet with them, we educate them, we teach them about the right way and the wrong way of what should and should not go down the drains, especially in the fats, oil, and grease, so we don't end up with lines clogging between their facilities and our treatment plants. Next. Here is some of the educational material that has been put together that we distribute both to restaurants, and if we have a clog in a neighborhood, we will pass, some of these are door hangers that we will put out. We also have gone to the fairgrounds. We go to a lot of the elementary schools. We're trying to teach the youth what the dangers are of putting it down the drain, hoping they will carry it home to their parents as well as learning it and keeping that in mind as they grow up. Next. Looks like I've spoke so fast, I'm gonna get y'all out of here early today. So I think that is the end of my presentation, but I will be happy to take any questions or comments you may have.
Frank, this is Wesley. Where do the bugs come from?
The bugs, they are naturally occurring, and all we're doing is giving them the perfect environment to thrive and grow, just like a septic tank. Those bugs and organisms, they will naturally occur over time. So we just want to make sure we give them the right, or the loading rates, we give them the right pH, right temperatures, those type of things to keep them happy, multiplying, and do exactly what they should, but they are naturally occurring in the environment.
Do you ever have a problem with them multiplying too much?
Well, they only multiply based off of the amount of loading or BOD that comes into the plant, and that loading can vary dramatically. And that's where our lab is so crucial in giving us results every day. And we can take that information and we calculate what is that loading coming in and how much what we refer to as wasting, how many of the organisms do we need to waste back out of the system to maintain that proper population.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Very good. Thank you.
I've got a question for Frank, please. What's the worst case that we've run in terms of capacity? In other words, between the two plants there were 50 some million per day capacity, but have we ever run 30 coming through it or 40? Do we have a lot of growth room in there, Frank?
Well, we are currently having some issues with I would refer to as I&I, inflow and infiltration. During heavy rains, we have exceeded 100 million gallons a day at the Elledge plant, and it looked like we got very close to that at the Muddy Creek plant at the same time. So as far as day-to-day capacity, I think we're in excellent shape. We do have some I&I issues, which I know the utilities field group and Michael Stover is coordinating with them to do some research on that. I think if we can get some of those under control, we've got ample capacity to take us into the future.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hey, Frank, great presentation as always. Not relative to wastewater treatment, but when you showed Muddy Creek, what's the facility to the east with the other lagoon? Off of like Welfare Road or something? I was just on Google Maps and it looks like another industrial facility and I didn't know.
Oh, you're probably talking if
right there to the upper right corner, there's another
upper
pond.
right corner. That is part of Wake Forest research. They've got a research facility out there. We like to, and it really is, they call it the monkey farm. We have been known to have operations staff go into the basement of some of our buildings after some of their monkeys have gotten loose and they were in the basement. So it is literally a monkey farm where Wake Forest Baptist University does some research.
So they don't mind being neighbors to us is sort of my question.
They do not mind, but we are getting a lot of new houses that are building up on that side, which I do anticipate will become more of a problem. I know, and I appreciate it because I'm the guy that gets most of the phone calls. I do appreciate the commission being willing to help us purchase some of the land, especially around the Elledge plant, to prevent or reduce apartment complexes being built right on top of us.
Thanks again. Always good job.
Are there any other questions for Frank?
Yeah, this is Alan Younger. So I have a question related to what you were just talking about, our neighbors. For more than a year, we've had some neighbors of the Archie Elledge plant share their concerns. I wonder what is the update on that and what are the next steps?
I will be honest with you. We have 2, maybe 3 people in the area of the Archie Elledge plant, starting back as far as 2010. They will call sometimes daily, weekly, and then they may not call again for a year or 2 years. There is no rhyme or reason. We have had some issues with equipment, and we fast-tracked a project which just finished up. I guess it's been about a year now with our primary clarifiers to reduce odors there. We think it was very successful. I guess from a personal note, I do know a person that lives a lot closer, and they said the odors have been a whole lot better. Will the odors always be gone? No. But we are keeping them in check, and usually in the spring and the fall, is when we will have odor issues. Just a temperature inversion, instead of allowing those gases or odors to go straight up into the atmosphere, they will get basically a blanket of air that kind of holds them down and lets them float outside of our plant area. That is where we're at, but we have no major odor issues at this point right now.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I'm assuming, Courtney, that we're going to get an update on the progress at Muddy Creek later on. That's not something Frank's going to tell us.
You probably don't want me talking about that one.
We might.
I was going to say Frank has definitely been involved with the project and knows all the details. But yes, we were planning on giving an update. Shane was going to do that with the capital plan updates at the end of the call. Unless you had anything specific for Frank, I do want to. Frank is a really big asset to our department. He's got a lot of experience. He knows the treatment process, and he's a good one to have. So we appreciate everything he does for us. And with that, if there are no other questions, I will keep going. And next up is our water and wastewater updates. This is our conveyance dashboard. It's a calendar year dashboard. So far through the end of November, we've issued 48 conveyance permits with an asset value of around $5.1 million. Should finish out this year with more permits than last. I mean, it'll be close and definitely more value than in 19. This is our water and sewer mileage as it compares to what's been permitted. We permitted more water this year than sewer, and it was reversed last year. But we permitted about 15.8 miles of new water extensions and 12.5 miles of sewer. As we know, we are not in a drought condition. North Carolina is not in a drought condition anywhere. We have had a lot of rain. You can see through November of this year, we've almost reached 60 inches of rain. So we've had more rain so far this year than we did the whole year of 19, not as much as in 18, but we have had a wet year. As we know, we've had some pretty significant rain events. And that was a good question that was asked earlier. As Frank mentioned, we're seeing huge spikes at the plant when we have these large rain events. So we are trying to look throughout the system to see where we have, major leaks that can be repaired. We have our collection system improvement program. We're going to start putting out flow meters in the collection system to see if we can pinpoint where a lot of that inflow and infiltration is coming from. So water production, we had a good month. This month we had about, our water production was up 2.9% from last November. But overall, the basin received around 7.81 inches of rain in November this year. So as I mentioned, we've seen a lot of rain. This is our water production fiscal year to date. You can see this year we're a little bit lower than we were in 19 and 18, and then lower than we were in 20 as well. So our collection system update. So far we have not received the reports for October or November. I'm pretty sure that we had showed you the August and September. We had 2 notice of deficiencies, 2 notice of violation, and 0 intent to enforce in August. And then in September, 1 notice of deficiency, 3 NOVs, and 2 intent to enforce that we responded to with the state. sewer overflows. So far, we're tracking right along where we were last year. The blue line represents 2020, and so our bar graphs, the bars for this year, this current year, are right on track with that. So if you remember, we finished last year at the lowest, we had the lowest number of SSOs on record. So if we're staying right on that, we're doing pretty good. And this is our overflows by cause. We, the grayish line is our 5-year average. So we did have more SSOs than 5-year average in October and November, but we did receive, we had some pretty large rains those 2 months as well. But overall, we're doing pretty good. The green, as I said, is a severe natural condition. So that was the big rain events that we had in November. We had 2 for that. Cleaning productivity, we're moving along very well. We're above our monthly permitted cleaning requirement of 10%. We're not quite to our cleaning goal of 20%. And our in-house crews are not cleaning as much as they have been in the past, and our contracted crews are cleaning more. That's primarily to we have some vacancies. We also have the pandemic that we're dealing with. Either people that might become sick, or they've been around somebody, they've been exposed to somebody, so have to be quarantined. So that's impacting the amount of cleaning that we can do in-house. Okay. So that's the slides that I have. Does anybody have any questions before Mike gives the financial update? Okay.
All right, thank you, Courtney. Good afternoon, commission members. We'll start by taking a look at the billed water and wastewater revenues for the current fiscal year, represented by the blue bar, which are about $1.2 million higher through the first 5 months of the year compared to last year, and also above the budget. Consumption is holding steady, but we do have an increase of about $1.5 million in system development fee revenue so far this year. So that's making up a lot of our difference there. And while this trend continues to be positive, we're going to keep monitoring it very closely moving forward. Here's a look at the expenditures with the actual expenditures for the first 5 months of FY21, just slightly lower than FY20 and under the budgeted amount, which is also good news for us. We'll keep an eye on that as well moving forward. Our standard revenue impacts of COVID-19 slide here to get you updated on what's been happening April 1st through November 30th. We waived $2.6 million in late fees and penalties. 1.6 million of that was in the current fiscal year through October. Just as a reminder, we did start charging late fees again in November. We currently have nearly 16,000 past due accounts and a total of 5.1 million in past due billings, compared to 2.3 million in past due billings at the same time last fiscal year. And just for also to note, the number of accounts that's past due has been holding steady, and if that does include folks that have gotten on a payment plan, and I'll give you some of those numbers here coming up shortly. Our delinquency rate is at 32.6% compared to 8.5% at this time last year, just to be, I think, expected based on what we're seeing. For reference, I mean, the delinquency rate has been above 25% since May. It's kind of fluctuated between 25 and 30. So that's kind of what we've been seeing. And so our past due balances are getting older, but the total amount, the total dollar figure is not growing. And it actually did decline from the end of October when it was 5.6 million. And we're at 5.1 million currently.
Hey, Mike, define delinquency for me in terms of days past due.
So the delinquency rate is the percentage of our current balances outstanding. So that means anything that's been billed. And then the delinquency piece is what's over 60 days. So that number fluctuates from month to month with a couple of variables. So,
okay.
And then we do plan to reinstitute terminations for non-payment in January. As long as customers are on a payment plan in good standing, they won't be terminated. So our customers just need to reach out to us to do so. And we've done some outreach. We've sent letters. We've had social media out there to remind them. And just so you all know, we don't have the staff to get out there and cut off that many delinquent customers. So we'll need to manage that and likely look at the accounts with the largest balances first. You may be wondering what some of our peer utilities are doing. Raleigh and Charlotte have still not given dates yet to reinstitute terminations. We know that Asheville will start in February, but most others have already reinstituted terminations. Greensboro, High Point, Durham, Fayetteville, and Duke Energy have all started terminating service for non-payment.
Hey, Mike.
And yes.
When you say there's 16,000 past due accounts, does that include people who are on a payment plan?
It does. And I was just going to touch on what we're seeing on the payment plan. What we're seeing with those, we did reach out to customers and tried to get them on payment plans before we reinstituted our late fees in November. So far we've had 4,000 customers reach out to us and sign up for payment plans. And so far what we've seen is about half of those folks have already defaulted on their payment plans. So knowing that the termination for non-payment is set to begin in January, we did put out a press release on Friday to remind customers about getting on a payment plan to help protect themselves before January. And the news, that story ran on the news, the TV news channels. Haven't seen anything in the journal about it. And so we'll do some social media here in the middle of this week to also put that out there. So that's kind of the big picture of what we're seeing and where we are. Any other questions on that?
So, Mike, you're going to do the cutoff based on the overall bill, not the delinquent time?
I think that's what we're for our revenue, for the city's revenue division. I think that's what we're going to look at first. We're in the midst of working out a plan to do that. We've had some preliminary conversations. There'll be a number of factors that we look at, but we'd like to try to help our collections group in the city's finance department get some of those larger balances, and a lot of those have been hanging out there longer than many others as well.
So if you've got 12 to 14,000 that would fall under potential cutoff, how many can you get in a month as far as actually cutting?
That's a really good question, and it depends on the number of other service orders that the meter services department is working. We were struggling to cut folks off before the pandemic hit because we were working just our regular standard, trying to keep billing the billing folks where they needed to be, and our customer service folks where they needed to be. So we had put that down as knowing we needed to do it, but didn't have the resources. So we're going to have to kind of shift our focus back to that heading into January and February. So we've had some preliminary conversations about that as well, but we'll have to manage it. So I can't give you an exact number.
In the past, what would we be able to handle?
That's an excellent question. I don't have that. I don't have that number. And that would have been a good number to have coming into this. But I don't. We can get it for you. I can update you on that for our next meeting. We can give you a much better picture of where we were and what we're seeing now, what we're able to do now.
Thank you.
And Mike, one clarification. I think, at least I heard you tell Chris that we're going to cut people off based on the size of the past due balance, but I believe it's the size of the past due balance of accounts that have just completely ignored us, right? I mean, if we've got a large past due balance.
Correct. That is correct. That's correct. If you're not in good standing, yes. If it's somebody who's not in good standing, and so we have the finance department has a group that does collections for folks that are significantly past due and have larger balances, and those are the folks that really need our assistance right off the bat, and that'll help our bottom line as well. But they're not in good standing at all. They're not on payment plans.
Mm-hmm. Mike, Harold Day.
Yes, Mr. Day.
Do we have any idea of how many of these are small businesses that are struggling?
Most of the customers that we're talking about here, I believe, are residential. About 14 or 15,000 of them are residential.
Okay.
So I think there's 1,000 that are non-residential, and that is more than likely a commercial or industrial account.
Right. Okay.
These are all good questions, and so I would encourage the commissioners to ask questions if they have concerns. But Mike, tell us a little bit about, I guess my question is, when we say in good standing, if someone is just clearly not paid us anything for 7 or 8 months, I understand they're not in good standing, but what does it take? I mean, what's the size of the payment plan that our average customers having to make just for us to get a feel for those that can't make that?
I want to say it was closer to a little over a month ago. It was around $300. I want to say was the average. And so what folks need to do is they just need to call into CityLink. We'll put them on a payment plan to divide up that balance, their existing balance, into monthly installments. And then so they need to pay the monthly installment, and then whatever becomes current in during the course of those several months, they need to keep their current bill up to date, and they need to make their installment to stay in good standing.
Got it. So if the average past due balance is 300, do you happen to know how many months we're giving them to pay that off?
Well, we started out with 9 months. Now we would be giving them about 7 months. We're trying to get it collected all before the end of the year. So okay, that was our intent.
So an extra 40-ish bucks a month is in between that, plus right. Your current monthly bill, which is also, which is probably a little bit less than that, actually, if I recall. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Mike, one other question. Have we ever had this kind of outstanding money owed to us that you know of?
Not to my knowledge, Mr. Day. I think I haven't heard anyone say anything that has seen anything like this before. I think it's an anomaly that us and all of the utilities across the state and country are trying to live with and manage as best we can.
Thank you.
And Mike, this is Alan Younger. You mentioned that many of the people who are on a payment plan have already defaulted on that. Did I hear that correctly?
That is correct.
When you say many, is it more than 50%?
It's right about 50% right now. So that's over the past month and a half or so.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that.
Yes, sir. Any other questions?
I'm curious if Lisa's on the call. She may be the one for this, but our cash flows have got to be down with this going on. Are we anywhere near having any problems to meet our obligations, our payments?
I think Lisa is on. I'll let her answer if she heard that. I don't believe that we would be, Mr. Long, but and I have not heard anything about that.
Okay.
but I would not think that we would be in that situation.
Your paycheck hasn't bounced yet.
Mine has, but that's for other reasons.
That's all right.
So,
That's all right. Yeah.
and we can get back to you on that,
That would
Mr.
be
Long.
fine. That would be fine.
Okay. Those were a lot of great questions. So, but if anybody has any other questions and needs to reach out, please give me a call or send me an email. Otherwise, I will turn it over to Jan to do the solid waste update.
Okay, thank you, Mike, and good afternoon, everyone. Through the month of November at Haynes Mill Road Landfill, we've taken in 114,218 tons. So we're ahead of the budget at that site, but behind where we were last year. And earlier in the year, we talked to you about the increased number of customer trips that we're seeing at that site. And that trend has continued, although we don't have quite as many as relative to last year as we did earlier in the year. We're up about 13% compared to the same period last year. And in the month of November, we had 21,383 tons, decreased from October, which is to be expected. We usually see a dip in the months of November and February due to the seasonal variation in the waste stream. And Old Salisbury Road landfill, we're still seeing the same trend there with waste decreased below the budget and below where we were last year. So 17,051 tons at that site. It's not an alarming decrease, but it is staying reliably under the budget this year at that site. And looking at revenues for all of the solid waste operations, including yard waste, we're at 4.8 million so far this year, behind last year, as you would expect from the tonnage numbers we just looked at, but right on the budget target, very close to the budget target. And the expenditures are a little bit above where we were last year, well under the budget still, but a little bit above where we were last year. And this is largely due to equipment failures that we saw earlier in the year and increased yard waste. We're seeing a lot of yard waste coming in, so sanitation's doing a really good job picking up yard waste this year. So those are, does anybody have questions about tonnage or revenue, any of those things before we move on to the agenda item that we have? It doesn't sound like it. Of course, you can always ask those later. But item number 5 on your agenda is to approve a contract for an expansion to the landfill gas system. So this is an expansion that would have been a routine periodic expansion. These are required by federal code and our air permit at that site. But at this point, we're also seeing a need to optimize the system because we have increased levels of landfill gas being detected moving up through the surface of the landfill. The scope of the work includes 7 brand new wells in the active area, replacing and repairing or dewatering at least that many again, installing pumps, connecting all the piping, the compressed air line, the condensate line to remove condensate. So all of that's on the active area. And on the closed area, there's also some work replacing wells and pumps and dewatering wells on that side. So the item describes the 4 bids that we received. And I think I heard earlier that there are questions about those bids. So if anybody wants to go ahead and ask those, either I or Jerry Bates can try to help you with those.
Jan, this is Chris. You were mentioning in that slide that this expansion is required periodically by federal code and air. So was this a planned expansion, or are we having some issues that are causing us to move this date up or back? Or
it was both. It was originally planned for FY21, or excuse me, for next year, calendar 21. So we would have been doing most of this work anyway next year. We did move it forward in time, earlier in time, because we were seeing these increased surface emissions. So in order to stay in compliance with the County Environmental Affairs Department, we do feel like we need to do it earlier than we would have otherwise.
And so when you say compliance, what are we talking about? What are we out of compliance on?
In late 2019 and early 2020, we saw excessive numbers of locations on the landfill in the regular quarterly monitoring that we have to do that were exceeding the standard for the gas that's migrating to the atmosphere. So we reported that to you, I think, in March of this year. You might remember us talking about that a little bit, but we saw that in the last quarter of 19 and the first quarter of 2020, and we've taken action on the site to beef up the cover, if you will, to increase the amount of cover that we have in those areas. But we have continued to see some increases. I mean, some increased levels of the fugitive emissions.
So this is kind of like an EPA requirement versus a safety issue?
The federal code of regulations does regulate those quarterly emission monitoring events. So it is a federal regulation that we're working to remedy. Safety, when you say safety, there's always a concern when you have increased levels of landfill gas because it can be explosive. We have not identified any immediate or imminent threats to anyone. We could potentially have odor complaints from excessive gas emissions as well. We've not seen that yet, though.
And where are these wells located?
On the active landfill, cells 1 through 4. If you recall how that looks over there, it's basically scattered throughout the roughly 50-acre area in cells 1 through 4.
So it's not on the periphery?
No, sir. No, this is in the waste itself. This is over top of the waste itself. The boundary probes are all in compliance.
I've got a question, Jan.
Sure.
We were going to plan to do this in 21, sometime mid-21 or something or another?
Pretty sure next summer, yes.
Okay. Well, right now, it's not a 911 situation. I'm trying to look at money we don't have right now. I know we might need to do this, but is it going to be a big fine if we don't do it, or do you know about that?
You know, it's very hard to predict. We've never had any compliance issues with that agency in the past, so I don't have much to go on there in terms of how aggressive they might be. But they have been very patient with us so far.
What I hear, part of them not even going to have their job next year, so that's good too.
Is that so? I'm not sure. They have a delegated program. The state of North Carolina delegates the air quality program to Forsyth County. So and as I said, we've never had compliance issues with them. So I'm really not sure quite how aggressive they might want to be.
Yeah.
And I spoke to staff with the county this morning, and they're following the federal guidelines, and they can't guarantee that there would not be any violations or penalties assessed at some point. You know, we've got to issue the contract and then build the new gas well, so we're still pretty far away from bringing those levels down. But they did state, obviously, that they're going to work with us as much as possible, and they know that we're working through. They know that we're not just sitting back. We're trying to make efforts to remedy the problem.
Well, this is Chris Parker again. I would present a certain financial concern in the sense that I know we rejected bidder number 1 because they just didn't have any experience doing this type of work. But between bidder number 2 and 3, there's about $114,000 difference. And bidder 3 is also about $80,000 above what the engineer's estimate was. So that is not small change. And I'm just wondering about the ability, as long as there's not a big hammer that's about to come down on us, of potentially putting this out to rebid.
I guess one thing we discussed internally along those lines, and Jerry might have thoughts on this as well, but we only received 4 bids in this, which was a little bit surprising. I thought we might have gotten more than 4, and 2 of those were disqualified for different reasons, but 2 were thrown out. So we're only left with 2 viable bids to compare, both of which were above the estimate. So I guess that begs the question whether we would get better pricing if we did rebid it. And Jerry may have some thoughts on that.
I'm not certain. I don't have anything further to say. The market is such right now that people are interested. People are very aggressive. This happens to be a type of construction project that we don't draw from local contractors. Part of that situation is that they come from all over the country. So I'm just not aware. I wasn't familiar with either of the first 2 bidders in this project. However, our engineer of record was very familiar with them and had been involved with them in successful projects. However, as Jan had said, they failed to meet certain requirements that were a requirement of this bid. And so we had no other choice but to not be able to consider their bid. As far as being able to reject all bids and start over, that plays both ways. There's really, in my experience, I don't see anything of consistency here. Sometimes people will see that because this is a public record, their bid tab, they already have it. So they'll either get aggressive and try to come in lower than the original bids, or realize they can't get there. Maybe a low bidder would even increase his bid in hopes that the higher bidders couldn't come down to it. So it's really just kind of a gambling situation here on whether it pays off to reject bids and start over.
Tom Griffin here. I got a question. Did I understand, Jerry, that you just said our engineer of record had experience with the #1 bidder?
They provided the names. That was HDR Engineering, I believe. And they provided the names of actually all 4 of the bidders that submitted bids on this project. The commission was familiar with SCS, the 3rd bidder here. In fact, they put in the last gas well about 5 years ago. But all of the names that submitted bids this time were referenced by HDR Engineering.
I thought you said that the first 2 that were eliminated that they were familiar with and had experience, but I thought #1 was ruled out because they didn't have experience. I'm a little bit confused.
Well, they didn't meet the experience requirement that was placed in our bid. I can't respond to what other commissions may have chosen as far as a qualification, but our bidding document said you must have 5 years of experience and Don within your organization, as an organization, I should say, and the low bidder failed to have that qualification. They'd been in business longer, they had employees that they had hired that had that individual experience, but they as a business firm did not have 5 years of qualifications.
That is correct.
If we were to put this back out for bid, is that something we can take into account? I know when you put the bid out before, you made that as a criteria, but can that criteria be adjusted?
Staff has the ability to make any changes in that specification that they desire. If they looked at that requirement and felt that it was important enough that they want to retain it, that would be their call, or if they wanted to pull it out. That isn't anything that our purchasing staff gets involved in.
Right. I think that requirement was 2 similar projects within the last 5 years, if I remember correctly. And it was the design engineer's judgment that that amount of experience at a minimum is needed to make sure that you can do the work safe and effectively.
So number one, had not done 2 projects in the last.
That's correct.
What about number 2? I understand that there's a protest. Is that true?
That was true. They replied to, I prepared a letter and sent to them in regards to a decision that was made on that protest. And they accepted the city's response and have chosen in writing to not pursue the protest with the city manager.
Other thoughts and questions?
This is Wesley Curtis. So in the past, back to bidder number 1, in the past 5 years, how many wells have they done?
I don't believe they had any relevant projects as a company. Isn't that true, Jerry?
I can't answer that. I wasn't on the evaluation panel.
Yeah, the design engineer reviewed that portion of it for us, but as I recall, they didn't have any experience together as a company.
Okay, all right. So, because I guess getting back to a question earlier, sometimes if you had maybe 1 or 2 and somebody else may have had a gazillion, the idea would be the experience that they did have or that they did get a chance to do the work. How effective was that? Was it an excellent job or was it a terrible job? Because I'm just thinking if this guy's local, close, how can you build that experience so that, we're kind of supporting as local as we can in the process. At the same time, not wanting to jeopardize the quality, because you're right, this is the kind of thing you don't want any mistakes or effort, issues on once it's completed.
Why would HDR recommend this and then turn around and say they're not qualified? I'm real confused by what's going on here. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Mr. Griffin, I didn't mean to interrupt. Their recommendation was for Aptum, the second low bidder.
Oh, I thought you said number 1 and number 2, that they recommended both number 1 and number 2.
No, I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. They recommended, they rejected number 1, the low bidder, apparent low, based on their lack of qualifications. And then they recommended Aptum, the second low bid.
That confusion may have come from me. When I was preparing the bid list for this project, because it's not a project that we have a lot of familiarity with contractors that do this specialized work, we relied upon HDR Engineering to assist us in providing us some names of firms. That's where, so when I say they recommended them, they provided me their contact information is merely what HDR did. They had worked with them in other states, such as Virginia, through the bidding process. I apologize, I don't think they had ever said that they submitted a bid and was recommended for an award. They just gave me contact information as someone that they felt could potentially do the job.
Okay. Thanks, Jerry.
Mm-hmm. If I could ask a question about Aptum. So the reason Aptum failed in the bid process was because they didn't meet the MWBE requirements. And I'm looking back in October, we had an item number 10 where we actually had to lower the MWBE requirements on this potential gas extraction because there are just so few subcontracting opportunities within the MWBE requirements. So since it sounds like it's difficult to get the MWBE requirements among the subcontracting community, if it were to get put out to bid, is there a possibility that some of these other contractors could be giving a little more guidance and help and placing them and the subcontractors together?
Afternoon, everyone. So I think that the issue wasn't with the contractors meeting the goal, because SCS did meet the goal. Aptum submitted a goal of 7% WBE and 0% WBE. And so the goals were 4% MBE and 2% WBE. I think it was because they were an out-of-state bidder. And so when their good faith effort was requested, they were submitted an example of what our good faith effort process looks like. And they were also given the opportunity to ask Alex, who is the construction repair specialist, any questions that they may have had. So I think it was not necessarily the goals, it was just that they failed to submit the proper documentation with their good faith effort.
So they might have met the goals, they just didn't get their paperwork in a timely manner?
They did not meet the goals, but they didn't submit the proper paperwork to say that they made the effort to seek the proper MWB participation.
Okay. I don't know. I'm just looking at $113,000 to $114,000 difference between those bids. It's given me a little.
Yeah, the concern that I have is that there's an integrity of a bidding process. So if you talk to SCS and you say, look, you did everything correctly, one of your competitors did not, but we're going to reject all bids to give that competitor who didn't do a good job another chance. That if you think about it from a purchasing point of view and as a bidding contractor, how I used to be, that sort of harms us and sets a precedent possibly. And maybe council or Jerry can discuss that, but I don't think we want to be a utility that throws out bids for non-conforming bidders just to get another round.
Well, I understand what you're saying on that, but the engineer's estimate was still substantially lower than the bid that we're proposing to take.
10%, right.
$80,000 less. And in the past, we have pushed back to bid when it's been out of line based on that number.
I mean, and so look, I mean, you can clearly, we can pull this and vote on it separately. And I'm not in any way discouraging anyone from making a motion to view this separately and or to reject it. But I do think we have to, I don't know that we've made a practice of this, is my point. Just, and I don't want to chase 10%. I'm not trying to belittle $113,000, $14,000, but that'd be my only sort of 10,000 foot concern.
Well, I would say I'd like to pull it out for a separate vote.
Okay, well, let's do that when we do the agenda items rather than do it now.
Let me ask another question, Randall. So in doing so, and we send this back out to bid, how much more time are we talking to receive bids again? Just another 6 weeks, another 2 months?
Yeah, I could respond to that. It would be considered a new bid. Therefore, we would have to follow the same procedures that we do on any bid, which is about the 6 week, at a best, about the 6 week time frame. However, as you know, we're not going to have a January meeting, so we could get about that process pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm. So is the idea here, the reason I guess this thing is kind of pushed to us now is that there's a concern about trying to repair this as soon as possible? Is that an issue?
Yeah, I'll answer that. This one has been challenging because the county is not telling us that they're going to, issue a penalty or violation, but they haven't said that they would not either. So we're recommending to move forward because there's no, we need to get back into compliance. We need to bring the numbers down, the exceedances that we're seeing at the landfill. There's no guarantee how the prices, if we rebid, how they're going to come in. I mean, we just don't know. And, there could be a potential that we get fewer than 3 bids and then we have to rebid it again. So the timing just keeps getting getting extended. We have worked with SCS before. They did build the gas system for Bowman Gray, so we have experience with that contractor. And then, of course, the compliance issues really why we had it on the agenda to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
So Courtney, if you were to put this back out to bid, is that engineer's estimate number going to change?
I would say no, but Jane, you can agree or disagree with me. I would say that it would not.
If the scope was the same, that would be the estimate.
If I could interject, can I interject real quickly here? Some of the experience has been in the past, I've noticed that when a landfill starts having a little bit of a gas issue, it only gets worse. And I'm concerned about putting it off and letting it start to have off-site problems. And then you get the real problem, then it's a have-to-quick issue. And but they don't tend to get better. They tend to get worse if you don't rectify the problem earlier.
And I'll add one last item for the commission's consideration. Good afternoon, everyone. Is this is not like other construction projects. So if we were building a fire station or even street resurfacing and things like that, we can understand the market and we have a good handle on people who are within our region as to what that pricing will be. This is rather unique, and we're pulling from a contractor pool that is much larger than an area that we have familiarity with, which leads to the concerns about how many bidders and what those prices will look like. So just what I see on the bond side doesn't really kind of apply to projects like, especially for wastewater or solid waste. Those are typically kind of unknown.
Why don't we keep going, and then when Mike goes over the items, and if there are any other thoughts or comments, we can discuss it more then. What, Mr. Tuttle, are you okay with that?
Let's do that.
Okay, so I'll turn it over to Mike Coivisto to go over the agenda items.
Okay, thank you, Courtney. Item 2 is consideration of a resolution authorizing acquisition of a water easement by donation for the Silas Fuel System Site Improvements Project. Wells Fargo CPG has plans to construct site improvements on property along Silas Creek Parkway. There's an existing 20-foot water easement within the property to facilitate site improvements. Wells Fargo has requested the abandonment of the existing water easement. The existing 12-inch water main along Silas Creek Parkway will be maintained within an updated easement, which Wells Fargo CPG has agreed to donate in exchange for the abandonment of the old easement. Staff recommends approval. Item 3 is consideration of a resolution requesting the City Council of the City of Winston-Salem adopt a resolution authorizing the quitclaim abandonment of a water easement for the Silas Fuel System Site Improvements Project. This item accompanies item 2 and requests quitclaim abandonment of the existing public water easement, and staff recommends approval. Okay, item 4 is consideration of a resolution requesting the City Council of the City of Winston-Salem adopt a resolution authorizing the quitclaim abandonment of a sewer easement for Aspen Point. Aspen Point LLC has plans to construct an apartment complex, and a new sewer main will need to be installed as part of the project. A public sewer easement was recorded across this property for future sewer, but the proposed sewer to serve Aspen Point does not fall within this recorded easement, and Aspen Point has requested abandonment of the existing easement with a new easement to be recorded for the installation of the sewer in the new location. Staff recommends approval. Okay, so we're back to item 5. Had some discussion about this.
Mike, why don't we?
Basically, we're recommending.
If we're gonna pull this, let's discuss it when we vote on it at that time.
Okay, number 6.
Okay. Moving
When
on
I
to
say
number
pull it, I
6.
mean pull it from the consent. I want to make sure I'm speaking correctly. We're not pulling it. We're pulling from the consent agenda and discussing it as a separate item. So let's just discuss it at that time.
Number 6.
Okay, item number 6 is consideration of a resolution awarding a contract for fire hydrants. Bids were received November 10th, 2020 for a contract to purchase various quantities and sizes of fire hydrants, with Core and Main LP coming in as the low bidder at $246,090.40. And it's recommended that a contract to purchase fire hydrants be awarded to Core and Main LP, the low bidder meeting specifications in the estimated amount of $246,090.40.
I got a question, Harold A. How many hydrants is this, and are they just going to be laying at our utilities yard, or these are going to be planted in the ground?
Jerry, do you happen? I don't have that information in front of me. Do you have that as part of the bid? And
yes, I have that. It varies by size, of course, and as stated in the document, they're just estimated quantities. So, for example, and keep in mind that we order them as we need them. So, in regards to whether there's no intentions of purchasing all of these and then storing them in our warehouse. They'll be released as needed. So, like there's quantity of 25 that are 36-inch diameter, 40 at 42-inch, 25 at 48-inch. So that's the typical quantities.
Are these fire hydrants or valves?
These are fire hydrants.
Okay. But that big a diameter fire hydrant.
Those are buried. Those are depths of fire hydrants.
Yes.
They're not that big around.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
You're right. That would be a huge hydrant.
I'll stick with knitting.
Okay, moving on to item 7, which is consideration of a resolution awarding a contract for furniture. Bids were received November 16th, 2020 for a contract to purchase furniture needed for the relocation of the utilities administration staff to the Bryce A. Stewart Municipal Building. Items include cubicles, chairs, file cabinets, desks, tables, and credenzas. Terms of the bid specifications allow the Utility Commission to award contracts to the lowest responsible bidder for each item listed in the bidding document by manufacturer. Bid proposals were received from 15 businesses, with the following 5 vendors submitting low bids for various pieces of furniture. Contract Business Solutions, Inc., in the amount of $193,233.53. Institutional Interiors, Inc., in the amount of $38,370.47. Stevens Office Systems, Inc., in the amount of $24,232.86. Furniture Land South, Inc., in the amount of $11,458.34. And WJ Office Equipment, Inc., in the amount of $7,756.89 for a total of $275,052.09. The cost estimate for the furniture was $284,564. Staff recommends that contracts be awarded to the aforementioned 5 vendors in the low bid amounts noted for a total amount of $275,052.09.
Harold, I got
go ahead, Harold.
Well, my question is, we spent $400-some thousand remodeling, is that correct? From City Hall South. And now we've got another $200-some thousand for furniture. Did we leave the old furniture where we was at?
And that's my question. Is other city departments, are they reimbursing us for?
Well, that's my question, because we left some good furniture, I think, that the council people took over our office. So are they going to pay us for all the new furniture we've had to buy? That's my question.
I'm not sure who's
I'll go ahead
supposed to
and
answer
I
that.
think everybody knows the answer to that is no.
Oh, come on, man. Damon.
Besides, I think Mike Coivisto had carved his name in his desk, so we would have to significantly discount it anyway.
Sort of like at school.
That's true. That's
Yes,
true.
sir. Just like in school.
That's right. That's everybody wanted that office. All right.
Okay, Mike, you may go on, I guess.
Okay.
Harold's dissatisfied with you, though.
Understandable. Okay, item number 8 is consideration of a resolution awarding a purchase order to N. Harris Computer Corporation for an upgrade to the utility billing system. Harris Computer Corporation is the provider of our utility billing system, and that software was last upgraded in 2016. Will need it, and a new upgrade is recommended at this time. The new upgrade will provide enhanced security and application programming interface capabilities, additional inventory and account payment plan management functionality, and a new integration with the city's geographic information system software. It will also allow for additional configuration capabilities associated with the implementation of the advanced metering infrastructure program, the new customer portal, and the city's new payment portal, which is scheduled to happen sometime in FY21 as well. Harris will provide project management and application configuration for the upgrade, which is estimated to take 9 months to complete. Staff has negotiated with Harris as a sole source vendor for this work, a scope of work and fee of $176,730 for the project, which is in line with other information system projects of similar scope and duration. Staff recommends approval of a purchase order in the amount of $176,730 to N. Harris Computer Corporation as a sole source vendor for an upgrade to the utility billing system software. Okay, item 9 is consideration of a resolution awarding a contract for bill printing and mailing services. The utilities billing office generates approximately 870,000 utility bills and delinquency notices each year, which must be printed and mailed by a vendor. A request for proposals to provide these services was issued on September 3rd, 2020. 6 proposals were received, and an evaluation panel of city staff reviewed the proposals to select the business most qualified to meet the requirements of the RFP. Following the evaluation, staff assigned the top score to Cibus Direct, Inc. of Cleveland, Ohio. Terms of the RFP provide for an initial contract of 1 year with the option for 4 additional 12-month periods. Staff recommends a new 1-year contract with Cibus Direct, Inc. with an option to renew for 4 additional years. Based on current volumes, the estimated annual cost of the new agreement is $90,000, and it is recommended that a purchase order be awarded in that amount, with the option to extend for 4 additional years, making the total estimated value of the award $450,000.
Question, Harold. Is this the replacing the company in Charlotte that was doing it?
It replaces Arista, who has been our vendor for a number of years. I believe they have an office in Charlotte, but they also have an office here in Winston-Salem.
Arista? Okay.
Yep. Any other questions on any of the items on the agenda? All right, thank you all.
Courtney shared the agenda items, number 1 as the minutes, numbers 2 through 9 as finance items. And if the council might get me in trouble, but I would entertain a motion to do consent agenda items for all. Well, first of all, is there any commission member want to pull for separate consideration any other than agenda item number 5?
Mr. Tuttle, this is Chris. As you mentioned, I would like to pull item 5, and I do a move approval on items 1 through 4 and 6 through 9.
I have a motion. I have a motion and a second for approval of items 1 through 4 and 6 through 9. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Roll call. Vote. Mr. Curtis, yes or no?
Yes.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Ms. Hines, I saw a yes. I'm going to take that as a yes. Mr. Jernigan,
Yes.
Mr. Long,
Yes.
Mr. Parker,
Affirmative.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
and Mr. Younger.
Yes.
Those 8 agenda items, 1 through 4 and 6 through 9, pass. I would now entertain a motion relative to agenda item number 5. And or further discussion, if you have questions.
I'll make a motion. We put off number 5 to at least 6 months and then reconsider it.
May I discuss as well?
Yeah, Dwayne, give me one, see if anybody wants to second that before we discuss, since I'm such a rule follower.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say 6 months, but I do agree about postponing it at least until the February meeting when hopefully we would have more bids.
I'll amend my motion.
I'm hearing you want to call for a no vote and direct staff to reissue bids for this project.
Correct.
Did I hear that?
Correct.
And I second that.
All right, Mr. Long.
My discussion revolved around something you said, that the problem accelerates possibly and getting worse. I'm concerned about pulling it with potential liability, that the problem worsens and creates a problem back to us on this thing. I don't like losing $113,000 on this thing, but I do have reservations now about extending the time for this.
This is Wesley Curtis. Yeah, so I have kind of, I guess, 3 basic concerns. One is extending it for this long period of time. I certainly wanted to come across with the county and any other officials out there that we're working as fast as possible to alleviate some potential issue we have with the gas, especially potentially getting worse. Number 2, I'm also concerned about the bidders that did follow the rules and how it's perceived. As Randall said, if we send this thing back out, why should I put the work into this thing when all you're going to do is change the rules if it's not what you want? I think there is some perception with that. And I think number 3, because these are specialty contractors and they may be busy on other things, it is certainly a risk in the number of bidders we might get next time around.
Thank you. Other comments or questions?
Yeah, one question I have is the reason for postponing the vote on this to get more bidders or for the bidders to be lower bidders?
Well, we can't direct that.
And I think Mr. Day is shaking his head on the second one. It's really hoping to get lower bids.
That's correct.
Remembering that 2 of the 4 were deemed non-responsive.
Right.
But also remembering that the engineer's estimate was $80,000 less than the bidder number 3. And there was a discussion that they didn't think that they would adjust that engineer's estimate. And I'll say my other concern, kind of as Mr. Long was talking, if there was a certain amount of urgency about this and we started seeing issues over a year ago, I mean, here we are a year out from that. So I didn't sense that sense of urgency in the November meeting.
Well, I was going to ask that same question earlier, is that how are we tracking to know when it's time to start doing something? And, to the point of where we are today, and it's got to be done tomorrow. But I guess regardless of that, my biggest concern is if we send it back out to bids, do we lose both time and money because of the lack of bids coming in?
Any other thoughts or questions?
Motion.
So we have a motion to reject and ask staff to reconsider. And motion and a second. Are we ready to vote? One last call for any comments or questions. Okay. Patrice, help me count. Mr. Curtis.
My vote is to not to support the motion, so no.
No. Mr. Day.
Support the motion, yes.
Mr. Griffin.
No.
No. Ms. Hines. Ms. Hines, I'm unmuting you right now. I thought I could unmute you. I can't unmute you. Ms. Hines, can you?
Yeah.
No. No, you're on. No. Okay, I've got a no. Okay, thank you. Sorry. It's Courtney's messing you up, Ms. Hines. I promise it's her. Mr. Jernigan.
No.
Mr. Long.
No.
Mr. Parker.
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
No.
And Mr. Younger.
No.
By my count, that's 7-2.
That's exactly right.
Thank you. I was holding up my fingers like this. So okay, that motion fails. I would entertain another motion relative to agenda item number 5.
This is Wesley Curtis. I move that we accept the item number 5 as stated.
I have a motion.
Alan Younger, and I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on this item? Hearing none, here we go again. Mr. Curtis.
Yes.
Mr. Day.
No.
Mr. Griffin.
Yes.
Ms. Hines. Courtney.
Yes. No,
Yes,
hold
I
on.
saw a yes. I saw a yes. Mr. Jernigan.
Yes.
Mr. Long.
Yes.
Mr. Parker.
No.
Mr. Stewart. No, sorry, he's not. Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
And Mr. Younger.
Yes. Yes.
That motion passes by the same 7-2 vote. And I'd like to take a moment to say this is a great discussion. I think this is what this body is supposed to be. There's nothing wrong with this board. In fact, it's encouraging this board to challenge staff at times. So I thank Mr. Day, Mr. Parker, and everybody else for bringing up this good discussion. Courtney, anything else from the staff? It is 2:33.
So it is 2:33, and we've got the capital projects update. And if it's okay with the commission, we will give that brief update since we will not be meeting in January unless we need to, for some reason, need to sign off now.
This is Chris. Yeah, I really want to hear about the status of the Muddy Creek project. So if we could do that.
Okay.
I've got to go. This is Tom. I've got to go. So I won't sign off.
Okay.
Same to y'all. Have a good Christmas.
Happy holidays to you, Tom.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay, Shang, are you ready?
I'm ready. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're staying dry this very wet day. First up is Muddy Sips. First, I'd like to address what I think is Mr. Parker has been waiting to hear about, which is you've probably noticed that the estimated final completion date has been moved from December to January for this project. And I wanted to mention there's a couple of reasons for that. The first one is there's the elevator in the Headworks building. So when the elevator inspector came, he identified some issues that he wanted us to address. So we have to get that fixed, and then we have to schedule another time for the inspector to come back and certify it. Sorry, was there a comment? No, okay, sorry. Another reason is we've had a couple of really high rain events, and so that caused weather delays. Mother Nature was not on our side. And another reason I'd say is that site cleanup has been taking longer than what we were expecting. So I guess I might have been a little overly optimistic when I put the December deadline, but the elevator is the last thing they need to do before it's considered substantial completion. And I was out there on Friday, and I think the inspector was coming back either this last week or this week. So we are getting close. There's light at the end of the tunnel, I believe. Sorry, Courtney, can you go back?
Oh, yep.
And so I've included the liquidated damages that we've assessed so far, and if you amounts to almost $5 million, and we have withheld around 2.5 million so far in retainage. And they're currently working on site cleanup and the face placement and paving operations. Any questions?
Yeah, if I could ask a question on that, and you can, and Courtney can tell me if this is something that we can have, not in closed session, but are there other, as I'm looking at those numbers, are there other numbers that we're in disagreement with the contractor on?
So, yes, there are outstanding claims that the contractor has that we disagree with. And is Marilena, are you still on the phone? She might can chime in, but yes, there are outstanding claims around 26 million, if I'm not mistaken, that for the most part that we disagree with. We do plan on coming back in March for closed session with our outside counsel to give the commission an update about where we stand. At that point, we will be, have either had one preliminary mediation meeting, or we'll be getting ready to have one with the contractor.
So maybe educate me on the terminology, as you mentioned about the alleged claims versus the liquidated damages. How do the liquidated damages fit in with that?
So liquidated damages are in the contract, and for every day past the contract completion date, for every day they're late, we can assess liquidated damages. So for this project, I think it was $4,000 a day past substantial that they haven't met substantial. So obviously they're like 3 years behind. The liquidated damages are used to pay for, our overage for engineering costs, our construction administration costs with Black and Beach. Those are, and other ancillary things that come up from extending that project longer than expected. Claims are items that the contractor thinks that they're due money, whether it's for various reasons, that we do not agree with. A lot of times when the contractor thinks they're due additional money, you can work that out in a change order. But these are now claims to where we're, having conversations with the contractor about the validity of those claims.
And so do you sense that some of these claims are trying to mitigate these liquidated damages? And if at any point you say we need to do this in closed session, just let me know.
That's probably a good idea.
Yeah, probably so. Because I haven't, I wonder, I'm trying to look through here. I don't see Marilena, so I'd hate to get myself in trouble.
Yeah.
Okay.
Courtney, can I make a statement?
Yes.
Harold, I get a call from the county commissioners this week asking me direct what went on at Muddy Creek. She gets a call from the Dale Farwell state treasurer, wants to know what's going on. I don't know how he's got wind of it, but she tells me that Kerry had the same problem with this same contractor, but the state treasurer is now looking at it pretty close. I don't know if that's confidential information or not, but I thought I'd share it.
Okay. I think he has had some questions about the contract. I don't know, what his involvement is or what the office's involvement is, but yes, I think he has had some questions.
Yeah. Okay.
So it sounds like we are going to get a presentation in the March meeting. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Good. I think it's probably at this point, especially since Marlena's not on, this is probably a good point to just kind of stop discussion on that at least. so we don't get anything said on a record that may come back to bite us. Go ahead.
Okay. So here is the picture of the parking lot of the operations building. It has been resurfaced with asphalt and it's completed. They're working on paving the other sites throughout the plant. And here, the picture to the left is the demolition of the old Hetworks building. And the picture to the right is after demolition and the contractor is working on backfilling. Kerner's Mill lift station. We are on track to reaching substantial completion this month. The wet well bypass has been removed and they've began paving operations.
So hold on just a second. Do we want to go through all these now, or we're just going to go through the one that we showed earlier? Courtney? I mean, just trying to recognize everybody's time. I just want to make sure.
I would say the only other, we can go through the rest of them, or we can go ahead. I mean, it's up to you, the commission, whatever you want to do. If anybody's interested in the AMI project, we had some slides on those as well. I know I sent out an email. So it's really up to the commission. I know we've gone a little bit on time. So.
Yeah, we have gone over time, but I mean, I guess I've got a few more minutes. If there's anybody else on the commission that has to go, we understand. And so I guess you can just, in your chat room, say, I've got to leave and go. But another 10 minutes, let's just move on then. That's fine.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Go ahead, Shane.
Oh, sorry. I thought that's getting me. I'll try to talk really, really fast. Okay. So here is a picture of the contractor working on paving the site. So we're getting closer to finishing up. Roswell Lift Station, notice to proceed was February, and substantial will be February of 2021. Electrical work has been completed, and the gravity sewer has been installed at Browns Run and Linville Springs. Sorry. I'm ready. So here is the progress map for this project. The green is everything they've completed, and yellow is what they're currently working on. North Mill Creek. So Zachary hired a new subcontractor named Bruce Allen to help install the 42-inch pipe to help them catch up on the previously slower progress. And Zachary is working on a 36-inch pipe. Okay. And here is the progress map. The green is what they've completed so far, and the red is what's left. Any questions?
Nope.
Thank you.
Okay, so Mike can wrap us up. We just have just a few more slides on that. So.
Okay. Thanks, Courtney and Shane. Just to give you all a brief update on our advanced metering infrastructure program. which we're calling Water Savvy. You can see the logo there. We have completed the alpha initial deployment. Our initial deployment is in 2 phases, alpha and beta. We've installed 60 meters. We've installed the radio base station, and the meters are communicating with the network. So that is good news. The beta initial deployment is approximately 10,000 meters. The contractor has started the meter box inspections. They'll be beginning the box and lid replacements that are needed shortly. Meter installations are scheduled to begin on January 11th. Letters will be sent to customers this week notifying them of the work to be done. We've started the software implementation and integration activities with Census and our other vendors involved. And so the anticipated completion of the beta initial deployment is June, at the end of June, sometime in June 2021 is what we're thinking right now. Here's a map. The beta deployment areas are in the southeast and southwest areas of the county. These areas were chosen because they're 2 of our more difficult routes to conduct manual meter reading. It also covers different jurisdictions and gives us a good idea of the existing conditions of what we'll see when we move into full deployment. As well, this slide is a picture of a truck that will be used by Concord Utility Services while conducting the installations in the field. It has a magnet stating that their contractors for Winston-Salem Forsyth County Utilities. We did also want to update you that we're finalizing the radio tower locations. There are 29 locations located throughout the service territory. We're using existing infrastructure where possible, and other sites are currently being finalized. A couple of those may go to the Planning Board and Board of Adjustment. We have also terminated our agreement with our program management consultant, and we'll be issuing a new request for proposals likely this week. So that was UtiliWorks, and we just, after we engaged with Census, felt like we needed a change, and our new RFP will reframe the type of project management and technical support that we'll need based on what we're seeing now that we've engaged with our AMI vendor, which is Census. So I'll stop there if there are for any questions. And if there aren't any, I know we're running late, but I would really like to thank the staff that has worked on this AMI project. They've done an amazing job. The project, this complex, is difficult enough to do in a non-pandemic environment. And almost everyone on our team has a full-time job in addition to trying to implement this project. And I just have to commend our team's efforts here at the end of the calendar year. They have done a remarkable job. So sorry. Thank you. I'm done talking. Okay.
Excellent, Mike. Courtney, you got?
That's it for me. Merry Christmas to everyone.
Yeah, I would like to kind of say the same as you were just mentioning. Not only, Mike, not only just the metering, but all utility. I mean, when there's an issue out there that's got to be dealt with, they can't stop and say, well, we can't do it because of COVID. They got to get out there and deal with it. So we certainly commend all staff for their efforts and during this past 8-9 months and dealing with issues with no problem, with no questions about it. So we certainly appreciate that. And with that said, I guess we're kind of at the end of the meeting. If there is there anything else for the good of the order that we need to talk about or share? I will accept those comments or thoughts now.
For the good of the order, a motion to adjourn. Yeah.
Oh, we got a new motion to adjourn. Well, that's good.
That's my job.
That's right.
That's your job. Sorry.
Well, you can do the second.
Well, I'll do the second then.
There you go. There you go. A motion for adjournment and second, and all in favor. Do we need to do a roll call on that? I guess we do, don't we?
Yeah, unfortunately, yes.
Yeah, unfortunately, yes. So can I get some help with, I don't have all the members on here on my list here.
If you like, I'll do the roll call.
That would be fine. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Curtis?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Commissioner Tom Griffin?
He had to leave.
All right. Commissioner Yvonne Hines? Yes. Commissioner Hugh Jernigan,
Yes.
Commissioner Dwayne Long,
Yes.
Commissioner Chris Parker,
Yes, and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Commissioner Charles Wilson,
Yes.
and Commissioner Alan Younger.
Yes, and happy holidays to everyone as well.
Okay, thank you, and
Thank
Merry
you.
Christmas.
Thank you
All
so
right,
much.
take care.
Happy holidays. Merry Christmas to everyone as well.
Okay, thank you.
God bless. Take care.
Yeah.